Hello everybody, I'm back with another video for you today, and we have a couple of days worth of card reveals, which I'm going to talk about here today. You know, just general thoughts, impressions as I tend to do. We'll be doing this series all the way up until the expansion, where we get some new cards and some new decks and ideas to play around with. Should be very exciting. So let's jump right into it. We've got a Nilfgaard card here. Another tactic for Enslave, which is pretty interesting. The more tactics that get added over time, the more possible it's going to be to play a bigger Enslave deck with more tactics in it. So that's something to keep your mind on. And coated weapons, 5 provisions, damage an enemy by 5, deathblow, banish it, and spawn a copy of it on your opponent's deck on top. So this is basically Nilfgaard's 5 damage, 5 provision spell. At this point, pretty much every faction, maybe even every faction, I think apart from monsters right now, maybe they'll add a monster card, which does a similar sort of thing. Yeah, every faction has one of these. A little bit sad, I'm not going to lie. I mean, just in terms of homogenizing the factions and making them all as similar as possible, I'm not a huge fan of that sort of decision and that process. I think it's better to have very diverse game plans between the factions rather than just everything be the same but with slight tweaks on the cards, slight differences. But whatever, I mean, it's not a huge deal. The death blow effect is pretty interesting. It's a bit of a weird one because it's quite a powerful death blow effect if you use this on bad cards, on bronzes. If you don't, then it's potentially an upside for your opponent. You can't actually remove very powerful engines with this card in certain situations, because they're going to just get another copy of it. So, a bit of a double-edged sword there. Double-edged dagger, I suppose, if you're looking at the card art. But, yeah, bit of a weird one. Not sure it'll be played that much. Probably in tactics decks it would. And I guess you could go for that all-in on trying to brick the opponent or put a ton of cards on their deck and then go for the... what's it even called? I can't remember. Colgroom. Go for deck difference kind of style of deck size difference. But I don't know, seems a bit of a not super sure if this one will be played or not. Bit of a strange card. Next we got Witcher Saboteur. This is a Witcher 3 strength 5 provision scoia'tel card. Move an enemy unit to the leftmost position on its row and damage it by 1 for every card it passed. So kind of a late round payoff card in some way. Bit of synergy with movement. You move all their units to one row and then use the Saboteur to make stuff happen. Looks like they're really trying to support some of the archetypes that aren't already fleshed out for the different factions. So for scoia'tel, movement is seemingly going to be supported quite a bit with this expansion. For Syndicate, self-poison and poison in general. For Nilfgaard, all the deck, manipulation stuff, etc, etc. So that's pretty cool to see. I'm not sure this card will be super good. I mean, I can see it getting some value, but I think it's a similar sort of situation to Trophy Catch, although it is, quite a bit better than Trophy Catch, so it can be awkward. Like, these kind of low provision cards that are required to be played late in a round typically aren't too good, because you don't want to be playing, cards late in round 1. Quite often you're going to pass early on, or you might not have access to your bronzes. Bronzes typically are better when they're just like pure value and good to throw out and good with your other cards in whatever sort of length round, or are just powerful engines in their own regard, not requiring you to set them up or anything. So kind of hard to say. I'm not sure movement will be that good. Maybe it will be. We'll see. More support being added. It's still kind of too early in the card reveals to say, yeah, this for sure will be a good card, won't be a good card, etc. Unless it's really clear. With some of them, I guess it is, but yeah, this card could go either way. Depends if there's ways to easily set up stuff. I think, to be honest, I think it's just not going to be great because of that downside of having to play it very late in a round and being a 5 provision bronze. You typically don't want to do that. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that. Triangle within a triangle. Bit of a weird title on this card. Bit of a weird name. 9 provision neutral spell. Boost an ally by its provision cost or damage an enemy by its provision cost. So kind of similar to Vivienne effect in some way, both Viviennes that is. So I imagine this card will be seen in those kind of memey Oriole, Sienna style of decks that you can do. Potentially you can play this with Alza for a little bit of further meme value, playing it on him for 11 points. But honestly, the flexibility isn't really there. Like, just damaging an enemy by its provision cost is very rarely going to be useful, because often the big units are going to be low provision cards anyway, at least in this meta, like Hammer Dryads or like Thirsty Dame or like whatever it's going to be. It's usually those engines are quite lower provision, or you've got a finisher like Harold Gord or something, right? It's not really going to do much. You know, the only things this will hit are kind of cards and monsters, which are, you know, just very big provision, like Spear Tip or something. But even then, I think you'd rather run a Heatwave or something. So I don't think this card will ever be played unless it's in sort of a Mimi, you know, Sienna type deck, Oriole, whatever, Vivienne, all in high provision cost deck. Kind of a Mimi card, this one. Might be played with Auser as well, I guess. Next we've got Failed Experiment, 9 for 5. 9 for 5. That's a lot of points for 5 provisions. Like, a lot of points for 5 provisions. And at the end of your turn, lose 1 coin. If you have no coins, damage self by 1 instead. And while poisoned, disable this ability. Gosh, this is an interesting card, guys. Very interesting. I love this card. I love the design of this. It's like super, like kind of high risk, high reward if you go for the self-poison. It negates the sort of downside, and it just becomes a 9 for 5 if you self-poison it, or maybe an 8 for 5. And if you don't poison it, it's going to go down and down and down. So potentially it's just like a finisher kind of 5 provision card, which is really interesting. There's not really any cards that work like that. Yeah, kind of strange. Wonder if this will be played. I think the biggest use of this won't be self-poisoning it, because I think self-poisoning is going to run into potentially the opponent poisoning you, which obviously doesn't feel too great. I think more this... I mean, I guess you can do that against some factions that don't have poison. But I think more than anything, it'd just be sort of a finisher play. Maybe an 8 for 5, like, you know, playing it late on in a round and trying to get 8 or 7 points of value. I don't know, man. It seems a bit questionable in terms of actual viability, but again, we're not, you know, seeing all of the poison-related cards for Syndicate just yet, so maybe there'll be something that really is the clincher for making this actually viable. But right now, I mean, poisoning your own units doesn't, like here, it doesn't really make much sense to do that. You'd have to veil it afterwards if you're up against potential poison. If you're not, then still you're wasting a potential poison. But maybe there'll be a card they introduce that, you know, makes it very cheap to poison your own units in some way. You know, maybe it can, like, you know, play and poison, have many charges and poison your unit or whatever. I don't know. To be honest, guys, I think the self-poison archetype is a little bit doomed to failure, but I might be speaking a bit too soon. We'll have to see if the rest of the cards work. But this card is interesting in its design, and I really do like the design. Not sure if it's playable. Maybe at like 1 strength more it would be, you know, pretty good, or at 4 provisions, but I think it's maybe a little bit too weak. Cosimo Malaspina. This is a neutral 5 for 9. Deploy, transform adjacent units into random units that cost 1 provision more. So for 5 or 4 points-ish, you get this effect. How many points is that translating to? I mean, this card is just going to be wildly inconsistent, right? Could get you crazy value, probably won't, maybe will. I don't really know what to say about this card. It seems like a little bit... I don't think you'd play this competitively just because you can get fucked over in the same way you can get fucked over with a Gascon or, you know, whatever. That being said, the floor, I guess, isn't absolutely horrible. If you have a couple of, you know, 1 strength units or whatever, it's potentially not that bad. In the worst case, you know, maybe it's only going to be like 7 or whatever worse. I kind of hope this doesn't become competitive. You know, it'd be a bit crazy randomness to be throwing in every game. But I guess it's just kind of a meme card, which I guess can high roll really hard in certain situations. But whatever. Not much to say about this one. And finally, we have Griffin, Witcher Adept. 4/4 Northern Realms, Shield, Order, transform an allied Witcher into a base copy of Griffin, Witcher Adept. So you can keep transforming if you have Witchers on the board. That might be a problem at the moment because there's not really any Witchers that you'd want to transform into 4 strength Shield units. You don't want to play like the base Witchers, right? The Vesemir, Esker, Lambert at 2 strength. That would make this get points, but that's just horrible value. So yeah, looking a bit rough for this card at the moment. We'll see what Witchers are added. Potentially, you know, we might get some 1 strength or you know, low strength Witchers for Northern Realms, which can be cycled with this card, and that might make it somewhat playable. But right now, there's definitely not enough Witchers for this to be even close to playable. Like, you need 2 or 3, I think, cards which can actually synergize with this minimum to make this actually viable. I think just 1 card is not really going to cut it. Yeah, so we need basically 2 pretty good on their own cards that can actually work well with this. We'll see if we get that, otherwise this card's probably not going to be too great. But I do like the design of it. It's kind of like an ethereal or you know, something along those lines. Similar kind of effect, but a lot more restricted. So again, some pretty nice card design, just it's a bit bizarre that they're showing us this card before potentially other Witchers which could synergize with it. It just leaves us thinking, this card sucks right now, but maybe it would be good, maybe not. Yeah, can't really judge it too hard just yet. But that's all the cards I've got for you today, guys. Of course, there'll be some more out today, but I won't make a video on those until, you know, a day or 2 from now. Let me know what you think of the cards. I'm always reading those comments, seeing what the general community and you know, people like you are thinking as well. So yeah, hope you enjoyed my thoughts. Hope you watched the next thoughts, and yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.